lovely. No, again, before we get there,
Yeah.
within matter of we both were on H1B visas those days, and today it's a bad word, I must say. Whereas those days, within no time, within I think for me, I got my H1B in 7 days, and Rangan probably
I know.
similarly.
I did, yeah. It took us like 2, 3 months
That's
till
it.
that
And
time
within
was
no
done.
time,
Yeah.
we got our approvals, no long processes, pretty easy. Though we were scared about facing consulate interviews, etc., but it was pretty simple compared to what it is today.
Hi, folks. Before you watch this episode, I want to give a quick heads up. This isn't our typical episode. The entire conversation with this awesome couple is for about 2 hours. I didn't want to rush this beautiful story, so we have decided to launch it in 3 parts. The first part is basically going to cover their background, the reasons to move to US, and how the life of an NRI in US prior to Google or any of this .com, which is very interesting, and the reasons for them to move to India uh, will be the part of the part one. The second part would be covering their life in India after spending a decade in US, um, especially the ups and downs of living in India, the kids transition. Their elder one was in the 6th grade at the time of the move. So the curriculum that they have chosen, why they chose that curriculum, how did the kids adjusted their social life, their career progression, and then we cover the reasons why they decided to move back to US. And the part three is going to be covering their current life in US, and as a global citizens, as they retire, how do they see the future plans, spending time both in India and US. So it's a very beautiful story. So I hope this content will be very helpful and insightful for a lot of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Desi Return. Today, I'm really excited to have Rangan and Nagesh on our show. So both Nagesh and Rangan spent 10 years in US before moving to India, spent 7 years in India, and then again spending almost close to 10 years in US. Lot of valuable information, lot of insights in terms of their life in US, in multiple different cities, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, as well as like in India, how the kids adjusted and how they moved back. So really, really looking forward to the show. With that, welcome Rangan and Nagesh to the show.
Thank you, Avinash.
Thank you,
Really
Avinash.
appreciate it. And hats off to you for having this podcast. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. So if you can give an overview and a brief background about your journey, I think that would set a stage for our audience in terms of your time in US, India, and why you moved back and why you moved back again to US. So it just set the stage, and then we can kind of peel it off from there.
Excellent, Avinash. Sure. I'll take the privilege of starting.
Go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
So, I would probably just give a brief intro as to who we are. Both Rangan and I are originally from Bangalore. Um, both of us are engineers. We studied in a college called as Malnad College of Engineering, Hassan, which is about 180 kilometers from Bangalore. And as a matter of fact, I met Rangan in college in 1988, to be precise. I don't know if Rangan remembers the date. I do. It is August 21st, 1988.
There you go.
Yeah.
So our dating started in 1988, and the journey continues. We are still dating, though we are married for last 31 years, and we still enjoy our lives as a couple. All the ups and downs we have enjoyed together, we have made it happen. Thanks to she as a fantastic partner. She has bent backwards to all my adventurous acts. Likewise, of course, whenever she is wanting to do something, I suppose I have probably tried to bend backwards and
Yeah,
make it
it's
happen.
always a team effort, I would say. You can if you have a good partner, you can cross a lot of things. So I would say I would put it that way. Yeah.
Definitely.
Sure. Again, to go back to having started in Bangalore, Rangan from the word go after engineering, she was in the IT field, wherein in 97, if I'm not wrong, I think somewhere mid or maybe March or so, she got an offer from a Bay Area company called as Fortuna Technologies. She was in an IT services company already then. I'll have her narrate about that. And I, though I'm an instrumentation engineer like her, I never soiled my hands in terms of software or IT per se. I was more into sales and business development back in India. Was part of a German collaborated company called as Time Master as a regional manager, sales catering to South India. Least we thought that like we'll step out of India. So we were pretty happy having known each other before we got married for 4 years. We were pretty well settled in India, and then we were blessed with our first son by then when Rangan got an offer. I remember Rangan saying no to that offer purely because she thought that like, hey, Nagesh would not enjoy coming to the US, but being non-IT guy, being a sales guy, what would he do there? I'll probably have Rangan
Yeah.
narrate that. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, this was, when, and I've always, and just a little bit about my background, always been brought up in a family where, we value a lot of education, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of being very independent, right? So, my father till date consults, he does a lot of consulting. So grew up again in the engineering family, my brother, my dad, and myself. And we had a good I think we were in a joint family, so that really helped us a lot. That's a big plus, I would say. Joint families are a very big plus. And then, of course, then the journey started, and yes, and when I had my younger one, the first one, his name is R2I. I think that was the time when I had this offer. And as Nagesh said, we were pretty much settled, and we were like, okay, it's good, two people earning, and we were with our in-laws and everything, small kid. And then this offer pops up, and I'm like, Nagesh, do you really think I have to go? I mean, like, though, by that time, I think I had made some individual trips to Bombay because I was in the software field. Banking software had just come up at that point in time. And I remember Time Mouser, which is Times of India group for the financial thing, had just started off. Those were the days, I'll tell you. So then I think that was a time when Nagesh is like, well, I think you've got an offer. I think, you should just go ahead and try it out. And then my dad, I just spoke to my dad. And my dad was like, yeah, you've got an offer. So, you pretty much go ahead and try. I was like, okay, how do I live my younger one, back in India? Because it was not Google, right? So you don't know how the daycare works. You really don't know how things work. And I remember very well in the whole office, there was one system which was connected to the internet. And it was so difficult. So there was no Google engine, no AOL, these were the times. Yeah. And we were like, I was telling Nagesh, there's something called like a daycare where people you can go drop off and then you can do things. So we were
That
like,
is because we were privileged having a family around
family
support
around,
system.
with a good support system. And then Nagesh is like, let's go ahead, go ahead and try it out. And then I said, okay. So then the visa process started. And that's how I think I got my thing, and I landed first here in Atlanta. That was the place and believe me, in India, we never had heard about contracting, right? Like contracting, like when you join a company, it is like, okay, you join a company, it is a private sector, but you work with them and everything. No concept of contracting, but US was way ahead in terms of contracting and so many different things, which was kind of a big thing for me. I land here and I told Nagesh, well, you know what? I have to go through interviews again.
Oh,
And yeah, it was like Nagesh is like,
No, for both of us, we thought when she had an offer, we thought it is already the employment is on. She comes here, starts
start
working.
working.
That
Yes.
was not
So
the case.
it was not the case. So we were like, I was like, no, Nagesh, it works this way. You come here, then you talk to people, and then you go through your thing. So that was a change. But I think at that point in time, Nagesh is like, give it a shot. And I just went back to dad, and dad is like, I went back and I told him that, I don't think this is fine. I'm going to come back to India. And especially, I think what was really hinging on me was the younger one
Yeah.
because, I just left him there.
Yeah.
And then Nagesh says, don't worry, we will try to make this happen. Look around, understand. So I think what's very important is sometimes you have a lot of potential, but until unless someone says you go, try, do it, you will never be able to, you don't know that is within you. You
Yeah.
just need to have that good backing, at some point in time, where I'm really lucky, in that way, it was like, okay, go ahead, try it. It's okay. We are here. So I think that was a very good thing. And then I'll have Nagesh talk back because he supported in a way. He said he will come back. So maybe you can go.
Sure. Again, having said that, like, luckily without Google world supporting us, she had some good mentors to guide her, saying that, like, hey, this is how it works here. Have that wherewithal, and then be around. I'm sure things will happen. And lucky to me, again, while I was in India, I had not even put down my papers working for another private sector back in India because I was holding a pretty decent job. And
You took a sabbatical, right? Something like that.
almost like that.
Yeah.
I had not even told my employer, saying that, like, my wife has gone to America and then very soon I might also join, which had no such thoughts. We initially thought she goes, she settles down, and then I would follow. That is following certain protocol of giving notices to my existing company there, and then I follows along with my son. That is R2I. But anyway, it so happened that, like, she started, matter of 10 days after coming here, she started missing us. And having not known about the processes or the contracting setup in an IT services company, she said, no, Nagesh, I'm not enjoying it here. I'll come back to India. I said, no. All it matters is probably, I think I'll also come and join with R2I. I know you're missing him and probably missing me too. Which, of course, I was missing her. I was missing her a lot. So I said, I'll take the plunge and I'll dive into. Anyway, I talked to my employer there, and I did talk to my employer saying that, is there a way that, like, I could take sabbatical? In the interim, I will give a standby or a alternative resource to manage the show on my behalf in India. Though they were obviously upset about it, that, like, without giving much notice that I took up that call, they agreed. They were very nice and kind. So they agreed. I told, yes, I'm coming, and then we booked our tickets, landed to the US. Those were the days wherein, I'll tell you, every dollar mattered, especially converting a dollar into rupee or rupee into dollar. Boy, it made a big difference. I think it was 33, if I'm not wrong, per dollar. I remember, I asked Rangan, how much do I carry coming from? Oh, you don't need to worry. You don't need to carry
No,
much.
I remember telling $50.
Yes,
or
exactly.
something like that.
But
Yeah.
he said, you don't need to worry. She was given some allowance, by the way, to survive there.
Yeah.
So he said, carry 50, that's good enough. I got my son. I converted rupee into dollars, so $50, can you imagine, in 1997. And I land here in Atlanta, and then she comes to the airport to receive me. She knew that there was something called as MARTA, which is like metro service from airport to the apartment, which is this apartment which she was staying there, which was provided by her company.
Yeah.
We could have taken the train, but her excitement was such that, like, she wanted to spend more time with us and my child, with me and my son. She said, no, we'll take a cab. How much it matters? I'm just sharing this.
Sure.
But today, it's not a big deal, but those days it was. Called for a cab, sat. Can you imagine? I was seeing the counter actually when it was running. It had already crossed 55, though I have 50 in my pocket. Luckily, she had carried enough cash. And we were not carrying any credit card or anything, having come to the country just then.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the first debate between us. Instead of talking how you are, how are we? My God, Rangan, the money which I carried was blown away within no time. And that's how our beautiful journey started.
Yeah.
And matter of time, Rangan found a job that is contract. But prior to that, I would like to share this episode. The CEO of the company which had made an offer to Rangan, when Rangan said no to that offer, quoting my reference, saying that husband Nagesh will not be able to actually get employment in America. if I were to come. So I'll not take the offer. Whereas that's when the president or the CEO of the company, they said, Nagesh, if you're in sales and marketing, I would like to have you on board. Why don't you come in? Funny thing is, I remember telling him, the gentleman's name is called as TC Ashok. I suppose I can refer this. Wonderful gentleman, learned a lot from him. He was heading a company called as Fortuna Technologies then. And he did say that, like, Nagesh, come and join us. So then I said that, like, hey, TC, I'm not even an IT, that a software guy. What will I come and sell? So that's when he gave me a reference saying that, like, I used to sell insurance, and if I could start a IT services company, I'm sure you can definitely do it. And it's just the concept what matters.
Yeah.
So he gave me that confidence. As we say that, like, there are mentors all along. So he gave me that option. I took that verbal offer without even having any confirmed offer. I joined Rangan, hoping that I'll also join that company. But that was not the case, actually, because when I came to Atlanta, that was a new branch for them. Rangan was the first employee there, and they actually did not have any job for me. But anyway, subsequently, there's another elaborated story wherein from Atlanta, we went for a short period to Connecticut, and that contracted lasted only for about 3.5 months for her. And then she had another contract in California within no time. And we did not look back after that. And then we came to California, and then the gentleman who had promised me the job, he took me on board. So luckily, both of us were part of the same company called as Fortuna Technologies.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, I think it's a long story to basically wrap around thing. But in essence, I would say that what it has taught us through the whole journey is just try to go with the flow, right? And then I'm sure things will work, but you have to make it work, right? It's not like everything just falls into place, but you just have to put your 150% and just leave everything else to whatever you want to call it, right? But certainly it has its own nice adventure, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I keep telling him. So and of course, maybe I may sound very spiritual now, it's not about the destination, but probably the journey. And also what matters is your companionship, right?
Yeah.
And that those are the things which really matter, be it anywhere, and then you can take it along. Yeah.
But again, I think though with small glitches or hitches which we had along the journey, we made it happen together.
Yeah.
And
But
we will make it happen.
we'll
Like
continue
say,
to make it happen.
because there's a lot to do, and especially when you start looking, when you travel. I mean, that's something a big a focus for us. And I keep telling this to my children too. You have to travel the world, because when you travel the world, you are going to meet people, and then you're going to understand their lives, and then you're going to say, hey, my problems or my things are nothing around it, and you will actually see amazing people do fantastic things which will make you feel really humble. I would really educate. I mean, I really want people to travel. Same thing to us, because then you start wondering, oh, this is something which we could have done, slightly in a different way. Yeah, I think
So
that is very important.
it was
Definitely.
again, if there are any further questions on that, Avinash, don't mind. But there again, within no time, we enjoyed staying in Bay Area, California. Funny thing, another the thing which we would like to note, I'm sure today it is a different world, but those days
Yeah.
we were vegetarians, and finding vegetarian food options was a huge deal. And again, as I told you, the search engines were not such wherein we could search and then go to certain places. So all the time it used to be our own cooking and then eating. And if at all seldom when we went out to eat, we used to struggle hard to find.
I can quickly quote the first meal, I think, after I landed from India to the US. I went to McDonald's, and then so I asked them, like, okay, what do you have in vegetarian, right? So they're like, vegetarian?
What's that?
What is that? So I said, no meat. And then, so they're like, okay, are you okay with chicken? I'm like, no meat, I mean, then I told them, okay, what do you have? So I remember very clearly, it was like, I think it was just
Lettuce.
like a burger bun,
Yeah.
and then lettuce. and tomatoes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was even scared with the cheese. Because see, coming from India, I mean, today we love cheese, we love everything else, right? Because we're kind of, we are acquainted to a lot of different things. But Amul cheese was the only cheese which we would, we would kind of eat. It was like, okay, you take it, but it was not like a staple thing.
Yeah.
So from that to this is like an amazing thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can even remember like when they say like they consider like seafood is like a vegetarian, like it's okay to have like a fish or like it's still like very much not common. No,
But
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you
no,
very
I
much for
said
sharing
not
a lot of.
anymore.
Not anymore. Yes, yes, yes. But thank you very much for sharing these little like things, right? Like little stories where that reflect back your time like 25 years back or long time. I mean, things are different. I don't know how many people can recollect like the age without Google, age without where you have to find things, right? And as you said, it's the journey that's more important and enjoying it along the way. And that's what makes the memories. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think you have settled in Bay Area. I think things are going well. Maybe what made you think about moving back? Like, if you can share, like some insights there and what's going on. Yeah. So that would be.
Lovely, lovely. No, again, before we get there,
Yeah.
within matter of we both were on H-1B visas those days, and today it's a bad word, I must say. Whereas those days, within no time, within I think for me, I got my H-1B in 7 days, and Rangan probably
I know.
similarly.
Yeah, it took us like 2-3 months
That's
because
it.
that
And
guy
within
was.
no time, we
Yeah.
got our approvals, no long processes, pretty easy. Though we were scared about facing consulate interviews, etc., but it was pretty simple compared to what it is today. In '97, when we were in Bay Area, within 1.5 years, we decided to buy a house. And you can imagine in Bay Area,
Yeah.
the same time when I remember some of our friends in Texas paid 130,000 for a massive bungalow in Dallas, Texas, as against we buying for 500,000 for a small box, which was 1667 square feet to be precise, a small 3-bedroom house. I remember he teasing me, saying that, man, you're out of your mind to pay so much. And those days, 500,000 was a big, big deal.
Yeah.
Even today, I would
Yeah.
say. So we bought that. We stayed in a lovely neighborhood called a Santa Clara, which was coming up, and it's hub of Silicon Valley, close to San Jose, again Sunnyvale and such. Wherein we started noticing a lot of Indians moving into that neighborhood with a stroller on, a similar age group like ours, with a small kid. It was fun. You go to a departmental store, you bump into another Indian family, talk for hours together, share similar stories as to how they all made it to the US and such. So that went on, and we thoroughly enjoyed 10 years of our stay likewise, by which, after having served that company for 4 years, I had decided to quit because the company was about to be acquired. And I started my own company called as IDON in 2002. So about 4.5 years of being in Fortuna. Whereas Rangan, I think, was still consulting with them and then had
Yeah.
joined, was it Silicon Valley Bank or HP?
No, I was still consulting. I had just gotten my green card and everything by that time. And I just want to quote one more thing, right? So he spoke about buying the house, and then um so for me, I mean, this, of course, things change, your perspectives change as you age. That's very, what the way you think 20 years ago is not the same way you think today, right? And so when we bought the house, I was in my thing saying that, okay, I'm going to retire in this house. I mean, it's like, because uh, like, like if I take my parents, of course, my grandfather, he moved from the village to Bombay, and, we have a lot of, people worked in Bombay, and then dad came, and then they settled in Bangalore and everything. But it was like, okay, once you build a house or buy a house, it was like, okay, it's going to be there for eternity. That's at least something which you carried initially. So when we bought this house, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put up a picture here. I'm going to basically, have this picture, and, my children are going to grow up here. And, when I pass away, I'm going to be in the same house and everything. So then Nagesh, it was like, and, it was like the days when from that place, he was like looking around and he said, I think we should now move to a different place, to Cupertino.
Because of better school
Better
district.
school district. And to be very honest, we had a great set of friends. I mean, it was like a, it was a what kind of a house?
Courtyard
A
home.
courtyard home. So we had a family which was from Kannadiga family from their roots were from Telugu people and
Marathi.
great, and then there were also a lot of Americans who were there. So great neighborhood and Santa Clara happening place. And everywhere there was a buzzword. Can you believe there was no laptops? I remember I used to consult for Hewlett Packard and Agilent Technologies, which kind of got merged. And I mean, today where Apple stands, Cupertino, I used to go there to work, and it was beautifully housed in a case. The laptop was housed in a case, saying that this is going to be the next generation. Okay. And I'm like, oh, wow, we used to work. And I'm like, Nagesh, what makes you think we should move to Cupertino? Everything is fine here. The kid is going to school, we have great friends, everything is settled. So Nagesh is like, no, I think Cupertino has a better school district, because that's where, there were a lot of people who moved in and everything. So then I said, what will you do to the house? He said, the house, we just sell it. You just make money. I'm like, no. He's like, it's just a commodity. Come on, you can't get stuck to a house. How can you basically I'm like, no, you can't do that. So that was something, that's when I think something hit me. It was like, man, nothing is permanent. It's like you just have to just get to that thing. So somewhere, he kind of forced me, but I think it's good because that's when we just moved out of that place.
On that note, when we started our talk earlier, that's where she's really cooperated, bent backwards, being a fantastic partner. And when I take certain decision, she's made it happen. Because one, as a lady of the house, mom to a child is a different perspective than to a dad. But she really made it happen. The transition moving into another house, it was a cakewalk, thanks to her.
Yeah.
Again, having said that, you asked me a question, why did we go back to India? Typical of we Indians, maybe culture being what it is, or maybe it's the food or the connection to our families. All along, though we enjoyed our 10 full years of California stay, all along, the love for India continued to happen. And those days, talking to our parents, there was no video call, by the way. So talking to our parents was a huge deal because I remember
AT&T. I remember this very well because AT&T had a scheme going on that if you call India only on Saturdays or Sundays on some particular time, they would give you 4 more minutes. Otherwise, they would clock in like $1.30 a minute or something like that. It was so expensive, right? So it was like you just have all your emotions bundled up on a Saturday and Sunday, and then you kind of talk to. But it was okay, I think, because it was like the world wherein they said, okay, at least we have parents to talk to, and they were also young, right?
But again, having said, luckily we got our parents also visit our home back in US. My parents, subsequently Rangan's dad, they all visited us, and we felt very nice and warm. But again, whatever said and done, they said and done because they had their life going on back in India. They could not stay in US too long because their life actually was tied with our lifestyle. If we step out, they could step out because they could not drive on their own. So again, after 10 years, I started enticing Rangan. I told Rangan. By then, we were blessed with the second child too. And we had our second son, Aryan, who was about 2 years. And when we were in Cupertino, I told Rangan.
Oh, you should tell them that about the way we bought the first site. It was that's very interesting because it gives a little bit of a segue to this whole thing. Yeah,
sure. We'll slightly rewind.
Yeah.
So it so happened that, typical when we are making our lives and career, what went hand in hand with was to build our assets, whether properties in the US or in India, because we are all having come from a middle class family. Those values had its own. We were, as Rangan mentioned, we were in a joint family. and we had to have our own property in Bangalore, whether Bangalore or in India, wherever. It so happened that, like, I still remember those days the villas had started back in India just then.
Just
Bangalore, there was a gated villa complex wherein we had seen a huge advertisement in a local Indian Express, which used to be, we had subscribed even in the US actually, every weekend we used to get this sort of like a magazine kind of thing, not like a daily newspaper. We saw a centerfold which had this beautiful property in India, which was a gated community you could buy. And I remember when I ran it by Rangan, she took it too casual, saying that like, oh, this fellow keeps.
No, it's always been that, he decides and then he's like, okay, we will do this, we'll do this. And I've always been like a devil's advocate, right? Poking all the negatives and everything, because it's very important for someone to do that, right? I mean, one person can be very optimistic, aggressive, and other person has to kind of, either, and then it's good, there are some things where when we agree to disagree on different things and then we just leave it there. But this was like, I remember this, wake up and then he said, Rangan,
No, before that, of course, when I told this, Rangan took it casually. That particular way, I had to wait for India time to happen. And then I remember midnight online, I'm chatting with the salesperson, and then the gentleman sold it the way as if that's the last available plot away. If you don't take it, you lose it. So I couldn't wake her up by then. She's already hit the bed. Can you imagine?
22 years ago, right?
In 2004, I bought this property online without even one consulting her, though I had casually run it by. I placed an order, paying credit card for the initial down payment, bought it, and I wake her up at 5 in the morning because I couldn't sleep the whole night because it was a major decision for a closely held family like ours. And then I told her, Rangan, we bought a plot in India, and it's a gated community wherein we'll have to start a villa construction soon. She's half asleep at 5 in the morning on a weekend. She just brushed it aside because she's experienced my, how do you put it? I'm sort of, I want to claim myself as pretty jovial. I keep pulling her legs. She thought it's yet another episode wherein this guy is pulling my legs, because buying a property can't be a joke wherein over phone or online you can't buy it. And having told, I thought I got relieved, and then I went back to sleep. But 5 in the morning, this girl gets up, she's saying that like, now I'm up. What did you say? Can you please tell me? And then I had to narrate that this is what happened. And the journey is such that by then we had to construct the house, and she had no inclination to go back to India.
Oh, yes.
Whereas I had all the interest to build the house for whatever it is worth. And thanks to my parents, they helped a lot monitoring while construction is happening back in India. Without visiting India, we got the house constructed, a massive 4,200 villa. So 4,200 square feet villa. So anyway, sorry that we took long time when you asked me that, like, what made you go back to India? Having already narrated, we had to give this a sort of a tidbit or a story.
One thing I would want to add, right? So I think for Nagesh, it was like, kids will be street smart. Okay, I should tell you this because because
being in India, kids will be.
Yeah, because I remember, okay, construction was one thing because, it's like, okay, it's just getting constructed. Okay. I mean, there's no chance of, moving, right? Because this was a time when India was like slowly coming up, but, there were a lot of things in the US which was like, oh, things are so clean, road is so neat, there's no pollution. Infrastructure is great. The customer service is awesome. You have a great job, things are going fine. Why would you really want to move back to India? And your parents can come because they're young and everything. Why? Well, what is a big thing? So when we moved to Kupatin, Nagesh was like, no, Rangan, kids have to be street smart, and they can be only street smart only if they grow up in India. I'm like, no, I don't think so.
My note there was, US is very easy, streamlined. One can pick up the phone and get the work done, whether it is
process oriented,
whether it is bureaucratic or a government job or anything to be done. Those days, America was much straightforward compared to what India was. For me, I felt I learned very well, or probably learned the life better while being in India, and that's why we are doing better here in America.
Yeah.
Somehow that inclination I had. That was one note, as Rangan said, that like kids growing up in India, will make them more robust, more equipped to what I call go through their life and then manage their life. Plus, I wanted them to spend time with grandparents, uncle, aunts, cousins, who
know
all
the relationships, right? I think that was a very valid point. I would say that that's valid, but I don't know about street smart, because some of the trivial things were like, I used to tell him, hey, you know, guys, when I was young, I used to walk like few kilometers, and then I used to pick up 2 buses to reach my school and then do the same thing. I told him, do you think today you're going to just let go your son to pick up the same 2 buses and then go there? Instead of that, what you're going to do? You're going to say, hey, you know what, I have to go to office on a particular time. I have to be working because I always want to work. I cannot just stay at home. So what will you do? You will make sure that they're comfortable. You have a driver, you'll have a car, you will have everyone. And then so I was like, how will they become street smart? You know, how will they basically go through the normal thing? You know, you and me, we did that. So today we know we can actually do it. But how will you basically do it? But we had our differences, but you know, we kind of
this is where we come together. Her not necessarily a negative input or a pessimistic view, but that gave me certain perspective to rethink or reestablish or probably further stabilize or even moving back to India. With a lot of hesitance, I remember when Rangan and my oldest son R2I, who was 11 years then, whereas the second one was still 2 years, long way to go. We made it happen. In a home, moved in 2007. Fantastic journey.
Yeah.
That is where I will stop. If you have anything on that.
That's a fantastic.
We'll allow you also to ask questions or talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a few things that I wanted to get into, if you're okay to share, definitely, right?
Sure.
I know you mentioned that you got your green card, you know, pretty early on. So I'm guessing you are a citizen by the time, or you're holding a green card. So I think
no, we were not citizens.
Okay.
We were just green card holders.
Yeah.
At that point in time. And that was the time when Nagesh was like, I don't know what was, you know, what was on his mind. Is like 2007, 2007,
So if
early 2007.
the big crash had not happened in 2008.
In 2008,
was a
the big crash
economic
happened. But 2007, I remember he went to India, and then I remember that day very well. I was sitting at home, and then Nagesh was like, we have to move, Rangan. You don't know, there are a lot of things here, a lot of bubbly activities happening. I'm like, I had a big book, and I am a person who very detailed, you know. I put down my pros, I put down my cons, and then I went like 60 years down the line. Where do you want to settle down? Do you want to settle down in India with people here, or, you know, because see, we were also not very much aware of, you know, we were just in our 30s, that 30. It's not like you're going to.
Oh, you declared our age.
No, you don't know to think about 60, 70 and everything, right? And the world was just becoming a global economy. I mean, you look at it, right? India was connected to the world, to the US, but not in such a way today it is. Because today it's like we're all globally connected. So then Nagesh is like, no, Rangan, we have to come down. Then I'm like, okay, we have to put this house for sale. You know, it's not an easy thing. And then we have to move to India. Then you have to look for schools. And I was like, oh my God, again, this starts, right? This is the whole 9 yards I'm going to start. And what am I going to do? But I think one thing what I want to mention is I can basically say this because I was working for Silicon Valley Bank. So great company. I learned a lot about banking, finance, and everything through that company. I was on the technical side, right? But I kind of understood what it means because I come from an engineering background, right? So not much of exposure to finance and everything. But I kind of understood a lot of things working around that from a functional point of view, right? And that was the time where India was opening its doors to offshoring, you know, the software offshoring. And I must, you know, opportunity just knocks once, right? So that was the time where SVB was looking for people who could go to India, set up something, you know, work, you know, with someone. So I was like, okay. So this discussion was happening, and Mindtree, which is today's L&T, was one of the first. For Mindtree, it was the first banking offshore, you know, services sector, which got done. And I was very lucky because this was in Bangalore. And they said, Rangan, if you're thinking of moving to Bangalore, why don't you actually help us,
And to her luck,
to do this?
the place where we had bought her villa had literally a back door to her office, in the sense like it was just matter of few kilometers,
Yeah.
and then no hustle bustle
No
of Bangalore.
hustle bustle. And they were like, okay, can you do this? Can you start? Because I by that time I was so fascinated. I'm in the data analytics field, so very fascinated with data. I was like, oh my God, you can do this, you can do this, you can understand. It's about, okay, you're trying to get away from the actual engineering, right? And then try to look at data in a different way. Today, of course, everyone talks about that. But those were the days when, I was like, oh, this is entirely a different world. And that's when, it said, Rangan, can you do this? You can go back to India, settle down for 2-3 months, but you still have a job opening here. But yes, it's a different world. It's no longer, you will probably have to unlearn certain things. I think this is very important, right? In one's journey, unlearning a lot of things and learning something new. That's very, very important. You cannot just stick to one thing. So I think that was one thing where I was like, okay, I think I will have a job. It's not going to be like, entirely different. I'll be working with my client, that part of is done. Then yes, it's a great thing to be with, your parents and your family and everything. So that was like, okay, Nagesh, let's take a look at it. Let's kind of look at this journey.
And on the career front, I was lucky because I had already started my own startup in Bay Area. And for me, the transition was pretty straightforward too. In her case, if her journey, luckily her company, Silicon Valley Bank, having tied up with Mindtree back in India, they asked her to go head that particular activity on the data analytics front. In my case, I had to bring Ideon, set up shop in India.
Oh, he went through a lot.
That has a beautiful journey by itself. Beautiful now, I would say, but I did not enjoy it then. But anyway, for me, the transition, luckily, by retaining my US corporation, I went set up shop back in India. So by then, luckily, I had fantastic partners whom I had brought him on board by diluting my shares in the company. And then he did a fantastic job managing in my absence. That helped me move to India, started my IT services or IT infrastructure services, which included both training and certain offerings within the IT area.
So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, because that's a key point, right? I mean, I know there is a reason for the kids, but it's a career and how you actually smoothly land. It's not like an abrupt decision, like on one day you just decide to go back. So there is that affection, there is that reasons why you wanted to be back in India, but there is also a plan in place in terms of career transition, in terms of, thanks for sharing that.
We were still young, obviously. I would want to quote that because we wanted to our career was still at a stage where we have still not made it happen in a big way, but we have seen it all to some extent in the IT space. And then we wanted to take it and continue from where we left in the US.
Yeah. Actually, one more thing I would just want to add, which is going back. So this was 2007, correct? So there were news that there was a reverse brain drain. That was the time. Actually, if you go back and then look at it, and then, but still, I think we had already applied for our citizenship.
That also happened to our luck very well.
Yeah. So we applied, and it was an election year, right? Because I think 2008 was an election year.
2008 was
yeah. So what basically happened was, and then, there was a lot of flux in the market and everything. See, today, that's what we say, right? Today, you're so connected, you understand there's a flux in the market, something is happening here, so many, feelers and everything. But then it was like, okay, there's an election year. We started our citizenship and we were supposed to just get it. Like, it was a matter of few months or something.
No, but we didn't know. Not very clear.
Exactly.
In March, I think 2007, we moved.
We moved in March 2007. We were lucky. I mean, we put the house, in the Bay Area. You just put the house, and after within few days, I mean, same thing happened even to our Santa Clara home. Within we just put.
The
I
day the
remember
post was
the day
planted, we got an
we
offer.
got an offer. So that was the .com days, and the web development and all that. Then Cupertino, we put it. I think within couple of weeks
No,
we had like
it took us a while
3
because it was a $1
months.
million plus
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
It took a
quite
while.
some time, but once we said 2003 March ko chalo, we have a green card. What is the thing will happen? Yeah, we had put a lot of. For me, it's all about ifs and buts and everything. So I do all that, and I'm very detailed, right? As Nagesh will think in his mind, okay, I will be like, I will have an Excel sheet. I will basically pull up the things, and I'm a very detailed person. So I was like, okay, even if we go, then we plan to come back. Sometime in whatever time it is, and I was like, okay, I will look at my company, whether I can come back from their side, because I will have to actually give some KT, do something like that. So in hindsight, did all that, and then luckily we went to India, and then within like 6 months we got an
By
offer
August, we were
for
called for
citizenship
oath ceremony.
And that's when we came back, and then that's when we took. That was a very interesting thing, because when we came, when we got out of India, we were Indian citizens, okay, on a green card. But when we came here, we took the citizenship. We were no longer Indian citizens, but we had to fly back as American citizens. But the question
It
was,
hurt us a lot. Emotionally, it hurt.
Yeah, it was like,
But
oh my God. So now it's like, you cannot do things in India the way you could have done things. I mean, it's like, a lot of things go back and forth, right? And with that, I remember very clearly, today things are very streamlined, right? Like your OCI or your PIO. And thanks to, how things have actually come up. But that time, there was a lot of confusion, to be very honest.
We were not clear as
We
to
were not very clear.
what happens to
especially for a person who is in this transition mode. See, it was very different if you had gotten your citizenship and you were there for a longer time, right?
Yeah.
But we had to get it, and we had to return back to India
apply
as
for
American
PIO.
citizens and work in India, no longer as Indian citizens, but with a different, it is no visa, because you are actually born in India. Sometimes I keep telling, oh, our use case, it's a different use case altogether, right? You have to do it. But interesting, yeah, we made it. I remember early morning, 3:30, 3 o'clock, we were in the embassy in San Francisco with, 2 kids sitting there in the line, and then, to get our PIO, and we went through the whole process. Yeah. Interesting days. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions, as well as connecting with fellow Desi Returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi Return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.